Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man wala. And we begin, inshallah ta'ala, with this fourth book in Mustawa al-Awwal, famously known as Kitab al-Arba'in an-Nawawi. Basically the 40 Hadith of an-Nawawi. And I've been sitting here, I have a lot of shuruh, a lot of explanations of this book, and I've been sitting here trying to figure out if someone ever commented on this name that we have here on this paper, and I can't find this name anywhere else. Either it comes from the manuscripts that the Sheikh found, or it may be what he is calling it, since he included, as we see down here, editions of Ibn Rajab. This book was originally a lesson that Ibn Salah gave. Ibn Salah, who's famous for his book on the sciences of Hadith, and that every book related to the sciences of Hadith is basically has to use his book today. And he gave a lesson with 26 Hadith about the foundations of Islam, those things with those Hadith which Islam revolved around. And an-Nawawi was in that lesson and took it and made it 26. Made it 42. Those Hadith of Ibn Salah were 26, and an-Nawawi took it and made it 42. And then Ibn Rajab came along later on and added 8 in order to make it 50. Right? It's called al-Arba'un just because the Arabs, they round down and they round up just like we do, right? If you had $42 in your pockets, how much money you got? I got $40, right? So, just 40, that's all right. Well, I got 42, but, you would round off, no problem. The Arabs do the same thing. I narrate this book from a couple different routes, but the first narration is only for the first 42 Hadith of an-Nawawi, and when we get to Ibn Rajab, then we have a different chain, and I will give you that, inshallah ta'ala, when we get there. But the first thing, we're going to narrate this with just the first 42 Hadith, those of an-Nawawi. But just to make sure you know that the first 26 Hadith are not the Hadith of Ibn Salah, rather the Hadith that Ibn Salah brought are in a different order. They're not like, no, we took 26 and then just added 14 on top of it. So that doesn't work like that here. Where it does work like that with Ibn Rajab. So most people just call this Hadith al-Arba'un an-Nawawiyya or Kitab al-Arba'in lin-Nawawi, like this. Allah knows best. an-Nawawi didn't probably name the book because it was his, and he died when he was 45, and he never reviewed his books because he died young, so he never had a chance to go back over them and to make edits to them and stuff like that. Allah knows best, he didn't probably even name it, right? Or he just put al-Arba'un fi Madar al-Islam or something like that. Today is known as the 40 Hadith of an-Nawawi, and if you talk about 40 Hadith, that's probably the only book that comes to most people's minds, although there are thousands of 40 Hadith books. And he wasn't the first to do it either. The book has an introduction and a, what do you want to say, conclusion maybe, right? An ending, an appendix maybe, an ending, and the appendix, the introduction is quite long. Usually in a big book it's about 3-4 pages, I say quite long just because the book itself is very short. And the conclusion is quite long as well. And what he does inside of that conclusion is he basically explains the hadith, the words in the hadith which could possibly be misunderstood. So it's almost like a vocabulary list of the book. Inside this edition here, that doesn't exist. I guess because of the editions of Ibn Rajab, then it doesn't exist, right? The introduction nor the conclusion or ending does not exist inside of this copy that we have here. Okay, Al-Arba'un, which is just 40, Fi Mabani al-Islam. Mabani is from Ba Nun Alif Maksura, right? Like Buni al-Islam ala khams bana, right? Bina, right? Bina'an, right? That word that we had for sky, building, erecting here. Mabani is the plural of mabna, mabnan, right? Mabani is the plural, meaning the foundation or the erection and the structures, right? Because his goal with these hadith was to make hadith which were very general and the principles of Islam revolved around them. And then he says here, وَقَوَاعِدَ الْأَحْكَامِ, and qawa'id, just like al-qawa'id al-arba, those principles, al-ahkam, from ha, kaf, mim, or hukm, becomes ahkam, meaning rulings. So 40 hadith, fi here means regarding or concerning, right? 40 hadith regarding the fundamentals, the foundations of Islam, wa qawaid al-ahkam, and the rulings or the rules or the principles of the rulings, right? As I said, basically what it means is that all of the rulings of Islam, or all of Islam, you can find the general precepts of the religion found inside these ahadith. And as it says here, it's mainly known as Al-Arba'un an-Nawawi, or like I said, sometimes you put kitab and it becomes Al-Arba'in an-Nawawi with the ya as it's mudaf ilayh, right? Kitab al-Arba'in an-Nawawi. Li here means belonging to. Abi, which is Abu, but because it's majrur due to the li, then it becomes Abi. Li Abi Zakaria. He didn't have any children. He never married, right? He said he never married because he feared doing wrong to the woman, committing some type of dhulm or oppression to her. So he never married, right? But it's the practice of the people to give a kunya, as even the Prophet ﷺ gave kunyas to children. Aisha was Abdullah, even though she never had any children. And so we also see his name is Yahya. It's a thing of the past that if your name was Yahya, you would give your son Zakaria. If your name was Zakaria, you would name your son Yahya, and so on and so forth, because they would do those names. Like someone named Dawood, he would name his son Suleiman. Someone named Suleiman, he would name his son Dawood, being back and forth like that between those names which are related. Like Yahya is the son of Zakaria alayhim as-salam, the prophets, Dawood and Suleiman, and this is something that they do. So Abi Zakaria Yahya ibn Sharaf. Yahya ibn Sharaf, his father's name Sharaf, an-Nawawi, which is a place, right? Ash-Shafi'i. An-Nawawi is a city or a town. Ash-Shafi'i, that's his madhab, right? You can see he was born in the year 631 of Hijrah and died in 676. That makes him 45 years old when he dies, right? And along with that, with Ziyada from Zada Yazidu, Zada Yazidu, meaning to increase, like Iman increases. Al-Iman Yazid wa yanqus ma'a ziyadati Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali, along with the additions, the extras, the of Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali, right? Who was born in the year 736 and died in 795, which makes him basically 59 years old, right? 59 years old. He was a student of Ibn al-Qayyim. Ibn Rajab was. Sheikh Abu Salah al-Afghani here, he has a lecture, or part of a lecture, where he proves that an-Nawawi was one of the teachers of Ibn Taymiyyah, right? And that Ibn Taymiyyah is the teacher of Ibn al-Qayyim. And that Ibn al-Qayyim, right, is the teacher of Ibn Rajab. And Allah knows best. As we said, this book does not have the introduction in it. This copy, or this copy that we have, that the Sheikh has given us, does not have it. And I Arwi Hadha al-Kitab, I narrate this book on Sheikh Muhaddith al-Kuwait, on the Sheikh, the Muhaddith of Kuwait, Sheikh Muhammad Bazmul, called Muhammad Nasr al-Ajmi, the Muhaddith of Kuwait. وهو يروي عن شيخ الحنابلة ومفخرتهم العلامة عبد الله ابن عبد العزيز al-Aqil. And he narrates this book from the Sheikh of the Hanbalis, right? Al-Allama Abdullah ibn Abdul Aziz al-Aqil, who narrates from Sheikh Abdullah ibn Muhammad al-Qara'awi, who narrates from Ahmed Allah al-Qurashi, who narrates from Nadir Hussein, from Muhammad Ishaq al-Dahlawi, and Shah Abdul Aziz ibn Wali Allah al-Dahlawi, an Abihi, from his father Wali Allah al-Dahlawi. These people are all famous for Hadith. And Abi Tahir al-Qawrani, from Abu Tahir al-Qawrani, from his father al-Burhan al-Qawrani, from Shams al-Babari, from Salim ibn Muhammad al-Sanhuri, who informed us that Najm al-Ghayri read it to him, and he informed him that Zakaria al-Ansari read it to him, وقال, and he said, I read it upon Abu Ishaq al-Shuruti, who informed me that Abu Abdullah Muhammad ibn Ahmed ibn Ali al-Rifa, who informed us from al-Ilm Abu Rabi' Sulaiman ibn Salim al-Azzi, who informed us that Abu Hassan Ali ibn Ibrahim ibn Dawood al-Attar, who is the student of an-Nawawi, he read it upon the Mu'allif, its author, an-Nawawi, Qira'atan Mawjuda, a very good reading, meaning not so fast where it wasn't understood, as well as, to make sure that everything was in its proper place. Muhaddaba wa huwa yuqabilu nuskhatihi wa yansakhati fi majlis wahid. And he read this upon him basically, right, with his own handwriting and everything, on the on a Tuesday, Yom al-Thulatha, on the 12th of Ramadan in the year 673. We see that's just 3 years before he died, right? In the Madrasa of Al-Ruhaniyya in Damascus, right? So this is the chain. It's one of the highest chains around today for 40 hadith of an-Nawawi. We continue and begin, inshallah. Any questions so far? I doubt it, right? I mean, if we look at the name, Abi is Majrur because of Le, Zakaria, right? Abi Zakaria. Zakaria is mamnu min as-sarf. So even though it should be a kasra, or not should be a kasra, it is majroor, but it's mamnu min as-sarf, so it has fathas, right? Yahya. Yahya is always going to be Yahya. It should be like Yahyi, but Yahya will never change because of that alif maksura. Ibn, right? Ibn Sharaf, we could just say Li Ibni. Ibn is majroor because of the li, right? Sharaf is mudaf, mudaf ilay. And an-Nawawi, this is majroor there just because of that's the ya nisba, meaning the attribution to that city. As-Shafi'i, same thing, attribution to the madhab. Ziyada. Ziyada is majroor by the ma. Ibn Rajab, mudaf, mudaf ilay, mudaf, mudaf ilay. Al-Hanbali is due to the attribution, right? I don't think there's any questions about that, right? Or are there? Like this next page is just the manuscripts that he took his text from. And this is al-Hadith al-Awwal. It's a very short hadith. A very short hadith, although this taking this whole page due to the chain and how it's put. He says, al-Hadith al-Awwal, the first hadith, an Amir al-Mu'mineen, Abi Hafs, Umar ibn al-Khattab, radiyallahu anhu, قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول إنما الأعمال بالنيات وإنما لكل امرئ ما نوى فمن كانت هجرته إلى الله ورسوله فهجرته إلى الله ورسوله ومن كانت هجرته للدنيا يصيبها أو امرأة ينكحها فهجرته إلى ما هاجر إليه. We'll stop there and we'll read the next part, inshallah. And we all usually translate this as according to, or on the authority of, or from, right? On the authority of, from Amir al-Mu'mineen. It makes the word following it majroor, right? It's a harful jar, right? Amir al-Mu'mineen. Amir is majroor, as we said, after an. Amir means the leader. Sometimes you find some people, they get pretty with it because Amir also means prince, and they'll say the prince of the believers, and this is fine. You know, this is fine. But it means the leader. It just doesn't mean just a prince. It means, but I guess the prince is usually the leader of the country, right? Like here, we don't have a king in Kuwait. We have an Amir, right? So Amir al-Mu'mineen, mudaf, mudaf ilay. Mu'minun become mu'mineen because it is majroor, because it is mudaf ilay. And Amir al-Mu'mineen, the leader of the believers. Abi Hafs. Why is Abi majroor? Because it's a badal here. It's a badal, a substitute for Amir al-Mu'mineen. It could be an Abi Hafs. An Abi Hafs. It could be like this. Hafs is mudaf, mudaf ilay. And Hafs, we don't know of Omar to have a son named Hafs, but that was his kunya. Abi Hafs. Right? Omar ibn al-Khattab. Why is Omar with a fatha? Because Omar is mamnu' min as-sarf. Omar does not take tanween nor a kasra when it's majroor. So therefore it could be an Omara ibn al-Khattab. So Omara is because of an. And it's mamnu' min as-sarf, so it takes a fatha when it's majroor. Ibn is majroor because of an. We could just say an Ibn al-Khattab, on the authority of the son of Khattab. And then Khattab is mudaf ilayh, right, to Ibn. Radiallahu anhu. So on the authority of the leader of the believers, Abu Hafs, Umar ibn al-Khattab. Qala, sami'tu Rasulallahi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He said, Umar radiallahu anhu said, sami'tu, sami'a yasma'u. Sami'tu, I heard what? I heard Rasulullahi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Rasula maf'ulun bihi mansub. Right? Rasulullahi sallallahu alayhi wasallam mudaf ilayh. Yaqulu, saying. I heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam saying. Yaqul, saying, present tense. Innamal a'malu bin niyat. Innama means, or it's a particle of hasar, meaning restriction, right? Restriction. So we can translate it as only or nothing but, right? Al-a'malu, al-a'mal, the plural of amal, right? A'mal is the plural of amal. Actions are nothing but, are only binniyat. Actions are only, innama, only or nothing but, bi and niyat, be with their intentions, or they say according to the intentions. Some of the narrations of this hadith, and we don't have to worry about that because we're going to study this text that's in front of us, but some of them make the word niyat singular, right? Some of them say just a niyat, bin niyat. Some of them say innamal a'malu bin niyat. Actions are with intention. Here it makes the word niyah plural, right? Bin niyat, your intentions. This is from Nawa, right? To intend to do something. Nawa yanwi, to intend, right, to do something, right? So actions are according to, our actions are only by their intentions. Actions are only according to their intentions. Wa innama likulli imri'in ma nawa. And again we have our innama, right? And it's only likulli, for every, and this li is making this majroor, imri'in. Kulli imri'in is mudaf ilayh. Imri'in is a man, just like we have imra'ah for a woman, right? Imra'ah for a woman, we have imri'in for a man, right? And for every man, and it's only for every man, ma nawa. It's only for every man, ma nawa, what he intended. فَمَنْ كَانَتْ هِجْرَتُهُ. Then he goes and he gives us an explanation here. فَمَنْ, so whoever, كَانَتْ هِجْرَتُهُ, his hijrah was إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ, to Allah and His Messenger, meaning he was making hijrah, his purpose of moving was to please Allah and His Messenger, was to go to Medina from Mecca to please Allah and His Messenger. To go to Medina from Mecca, I'm not sure if I said Mecca to Medina, it's to go to Medina from Mecca. وَمَنْ كَانَتْ هِجْرَتُهُ, so whoever's hijrah, so whoever his hijrah was to Allah and His Messenger, or for Allah and His Messenger, however you want to translate that, ila. But hijratuhu, it really means to. Whoever went to go here for Allah and His Messenger, right? Like that. Whoever went to go there, made hijrah to Allah and His Messenger. فَهِجْرَتُهُ, then his hijrah, إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ, is to Allah and His Messenger. وَمَنْ كَانَتْ هِجْرَتُهُ, and whoever his hijrah, لِلدُّنْيَا, was for the dunya. يُصِيبُهَا from sawaba, meaning to be correct. Like we have the word sawab here, it could be like to hit the point. Here means to achieve it. Yusibuha, meaning to achieve it, to get something from the dunya, right? To get something from the dunya. O imra'atin yankihuha, or a woman, imra'a, the plural of imri over here that we have. O imra'atin yankihuha, and imra'atin is majroor because of the li. Right? Dunya is majroor, but dunya never changes. It's always going to be dunya. It's never going to be dunya or dunya, dunyi, dunyu. It's never going to happen. It's only going to be dunya. So it's majroor, but it never changes. Well, O imra'atin goes back to this li here. O li imra'atin yankihuha, from nakaha, or we probably know the word nikah, right? To marry her, right? O imra'atin yankihuha, or a woman to marry her, fahijratuhu ila ma hajara ilay, and his hijrah is to what he made hijrah to. Ila ma hajara, hajara yuhajiru is the verb for hijrah, ilayhi, to it. So إنما الأعمال بالنيات, actions are only by their intentions. وإنما لكل امرئ ما نوى, and for every person is only what they intend. فمن كانت هجرته إلى الله ورسوله, so whoever his hijrah was to Allah and His Messenger, فهجرته إلى الله ورسوله, then his hijrah was to Allah and His Messenger. And وَمَنْ كَانَتْ هِجْرَتُهُ لِلدُّنْيَا يُصِيبُهَا, and whoever his hijrah was for the dunya in order to achieve it or obtain it. O imra'atin yankihuha, or a woman to marry her, فَهِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى مَا هَاجَرَ إِلَيْهِ, then his hijrah was to what he made hijrah to. Any questions before we go to the isnad?
Yeah.
Fadal.
You said a single person, like masculine, is imra'un.
Yes, imri, the Prophet ﷺ said, ad-deen, it could be without, okay, the same thing we have, let me write it down. This is imra'ah, right? When you add alif lam to it, this is one of them funny words, because when it becomes plural, it becomes nisa, right? But it's also funny in the fact that when you put alif lam on it, it changes a little bit. So we have imra'ah tun, which becomes nisa, right? When it's plural. Then when we put alif lam on it, it becomes al-mar'a. Like we lose that first alif there, right? That first alif over here. The same thing for the man becomes al-mar'u, right? The Prophet ﷺ, he said, and if you give me 1 second, I will find exactly to make sure that we write it right. The science of imla. Sometimes with these hamzas is difficult. Okay. Then al-mar'u. It becomes, this is the plural, or the with the alif lam, right? The Prophet ﷺ said, "Ar-rajulu ala dini khalili." A man is on the religion of his friend. Or al-mar'u ala dini khalilihi. He said it like that as well. Al-mar'u ala dini khalilihi. I'm trying to pull up the proper way to write imra'un, or I'm trying to figure it out. 1 second. Right? Imru'un. 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 If we look back here, it says imri'in because of being mudaf ilay, right? So it's got the ya here because of the kasras, whereas if it was just by itself, it would be imru'un, like that.
Imru'un, okay.
And when you put the alif lam, it becomes al-mar'u, right? Al-mar'u.
No.
It's one of those words. And then its plural could be rijal. Even though rijal has a singular, rajul, its plural is also rijal, right? It doesn't have like a plural for imra'un, right? Imra'un, it doesn't have a plural for that, right? Its plural is the plural, same plural of rajul. Well, yeah. Anything else? As far as the explanations of this ba here, why it means according to or by, and what does it mean, you know, and as far as don't the first sentence, ain't the second sentence the same, all that will come in the explanations, inshallah ta'ala. This also, just to be clear, this doesn't make someone who made hijrah and moved somewhere to, doesn't make them a sinner. That doesn't mean that. We don't want to go around saying, oh, he or she made hijrah or moved for a man or a woman or something like that, right? It's permissible. People move all the time for a job. They get a job, they live in New York and they move to Atlanta for a job, no problem, right? They made hijrah for the dunya, right? It doesn't make them a sinner, right? But you don't want to say, oh, I made hijrah to Medina and you did it for the dunya because you got a job there. Right. Is it permissible to go to Medina for the dunya? Of course. People can travel there all the time for business purposes, no problem. But don't make it seem like you're going to Medina because you're going to be so obedient, such a great slave, when actually you're just going to make some money. Rawahu imama al-muhaddithin. Rawahu, from rawa yarwi, meaning to narrate here, right? Here it means to narrate. Imama al-muhaddithin. Imama should be imaman. 2 imams. But because it's in the mudaf ilay, we drop our noon, correct? Imama al-muhaddithin. 2 imams of the muhaddithin. 2 great scholars of the muhaddithin. Abu Abdullah. Rawahu. Here imaman is marfu'. Right? Imaman. It's marfu'. When it becomes majroor, it becomes imamain. When it's mansoob or majroor, it's imamain. Right? And imaman is the fa'il. Imaman is the fa'il, the doer. So it's marfu', but it's marfu' with Alif, or yeah. Abu Abdullah. Abu, because we could just say Rawahu Abu Abdullah. We could just say Abu Abdullah narrate. He's the file. Badal here, right? Abu Abdullah, Abu Abdi, Mudaf Mudaf ilay, father of the slave of Allah, Mudaf Mudaf ilay. Right? And it's marfu because it's the badal for the file. It could easily be Rawahu Muhammad. It could easily be Rawahu Ibn Ismail. Right? All these are badals for one another. Right? Ibn Ismail, this is Mudaf Mudaf ilay. However, Ismail is mamnu min as-sarf. It's not an Arabic name. Ismail is a foreign name, so it's mamnu min as-sarf, and so it does not take a kasra or tanween. So when it becomes majroor, we put a fatha on it. Muhammad ibn Ismail, Ibn Ibrahim, right? Ibn Ibrahim, Mudaf Mudaf ilay. Or here, this is a badal rather. This Ibn is a badal for Ismail. This Ibn is a badal for Ismail. Ibrahim Mudaf Mudaf ilay, and Ibrahim is mamnu min as-sarf. It's a foreign name. It is not an Arabic name. It does not take tanween. It does not take a kasra when it's majroor. Is everyone awake in the class?
No.
Well, I mean, I hear somebody breathing and, you know, almost like they're snoring almost, so I'm just making sure.
No.
And Ismail ibn Ibrahim ibn al-Mughira. Ibn is a badal for Ibrahim, the son of, right? Al-Mughira. Al-Mughira is not mamnu min as-sarf. Majroor because it's mudaf mudaf ilay. Ibn al-Mughira, mudaf ilay. Ibn here is a badal for Mughira, right? Bardizbah, that's a foreign name. It has a sukoon on the ha. So obviously, they're not going to make any Arab of it because it's a foreign name and you stop there. Similar to Ibn Majah, right? It's not Majah too, and you might see that sometimes even on an Arabic book. Even on an Arabic book, you might see the ta marbuta on Ibn Majah. This is someone who does not know what book they're printing. They don't know anything about the author that they're printing because his name is a ha at the end and it just stops, right? It doesn't take Majahu, Majahi, Majaha. It's just Ibn Majah. Al-Bukhari. We could just say Rawahu al-Bukhari. And it's a badal for the file, right? So his name is Abu Abdullah Muhammad ibn Ismail ibn Ibrahim ibn al-Mughira ibn Bardizbah al-Bukhari. That's the first of the Imaman. The second of them is Abu al-Husayn. Abu al-Husayn. Mudaf ilay, right? Muslim, this is a badal for Abu, right? Ibn is a badal for Muslim. Al-Hajjaj, Ibn al-Hajjaj, mudaf ilay. Ibn Muslim, this is a badal, this is mudaf ilay. Al-Qushayri, this is like Al-Bukhari, Al-Qushayri. An-Naysaburi, right? Al-Qushayri, meaning he's from the Quraysh. I don't know why they write it like that, but that's how they do. Why they change the ra and the sheen, but they do. Qushayri, an-Naysaburi, this is where he's from. Radiyallahu anhuma. Allah be pleased with both of them. Fi sahihayhima. It should be. Whenever I say it should be, I'm not saying that it made a mistake unless I say clearly that there's a mistake, right? But I mean, without the rules and the exceptions, it should be sahihain. Sahihain. But because of the mudaf ilay, the added pronoun, we drop our noon and say sahihayhima. right? There are two sahihs. There are two sahihs, or the two sahihs of them two, so that we can get the apostrophe or whatever, the of, to see the clear, the idafa there. Alladhaini. Alladhaini is the dual of alladhi, right? Alladhaini, it could be alladhani, but it's alladhaini because of the fi. Huma, it's a description here. Alladhina is a description of sahihayhima. Alladhaini is a sifa here. So it's majroor, just like sahihay is majroor. Otherwise, it could be or should be sahihan. But it became majroor after the fi harful jar, so it became sahihain. Alladhain. So if it was to say sahihan, alladhan. Right? But it's majroor. Alladhaini huma. Let me erase some of this. Alladhaini huma asahhu al-kutub al-musannafa. Huma, they are, those two are asahhu. We have sahih, something is sahih, and you have something which is asah, more sahih, right? The most sahih. Al-kutub, asahhu al-kutub. They are the most authentic books. Kutub, the plural of kitab. They are the most authentic books. Al-musannafa. Al-musannafa from sa, nun, fa, meaning authored here. Musannafa, we call the author of this work, the musannaf of this work is an-Nawawi. Right? The musannaf of the musannaf is an-Nawawi. The musannaf of Nawaqid al-Islam is Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. Right? And we would say Nawaqid al-Islam, Qawaid al-Arba, Thalathatul Usul are from the Musannafat of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, meaning his authored works. And he is the Musannif. Right? We have the Musannif of Ibn Abi Shayba, meaning the book he wrote. That's what it means, the book he wrote. Right? So, al-Musannafa here means authored. Why does it say Asahul Kutub al-Musannafa? Those books which are authored, because the Quran was not authored. We don't say the Quran was authored. We don't say Allah is the author of the Quran. Right? We say the Quran is his speech, but we don't say he authored it. He wrote it. We don't say that. Right? So, Musannafat or Musannafa are written works. Written works. We don't say that. Even though the Quran is written down, we don't say that Allah wrote it. Right? So, from those books which are written, are authored, then these two are the most authentic of those of all books. Right? Any questions?
Yes.
Faddal.
Okay, so when you have a harfu jar, what comes after it is always going to be majroor, right?
Right.
Jar majroor. Now, when you have badal mubdal,
right.
does the mubdal come before the badal, or is the badal first and everything after it is the mubdal?
Mubdal is going to be the word that is exchanged. Badal is going to be the exchanging word.
Okay, so like in case...
Look, if we look here, Imam, that's your Mubdal. That's your word. That's your original file. That's the original narrator, right? Imaman. Right? Then Abu is a badal for that. right?
Okay.
And Muhammad is a badal for Abu, or it could be a badal for Imam. No, either way. You understand? And Ibn is a badal for that. Because we could say Rawahu al-Imaman and be done. Or we could say Rawahu Abu Abdullah. Or we could say Rawahu Muhammad. Or we could say Rawahu Ibn Ismail. Or we could even say, if we wanted to, even though this is really part of his name, we could say Rawahu al-Bukhari. So these become, you could get technical with a sheikh, with a scholar of Nahw, say, is this a badal for this? Is this a badal for this? Or they all go back to Imaman? Allah knows best. That's a detailed argument. I would be prepared to answer. But they're basically all badals for, and they could all be exchanged for this. But would they say Ibn is for that or Ibn is for this? If this is a badal for this and this is a badal for this, then technically this is a badal for that, right?
Okay. Because I had the understanding, I thought, that mubdal means that which is changed from what? From the badal, you see.
Yeah, right, that is. Imam is the mubdil. It's the one that's being changed. We're getting rid of this.
Okay.
We're getting rid of Imam and replacing it with Abu Abdullah. We're getting rid of Abu Abdullah and replacing it with Muhammad. We're getting rid of Muhammad and replacing it with give me a second, let me add 5 minutes.
Okay, now it makes sense. Now it's clear. Okay.
We're getting rid of that and replacing it with Bukhari. Right?
Okay.
Same thing. Abu Abdullah is the other Imam, right? Abu Hussein, Muslim, replacing Abu. Ibn Hajjaj replacing Muslim, right? Al-Qushayri, An-Naysaburi replacing this, right?
Okay, yeah, no, okay. It's clear.
If that makes clear, boy, you're a smart dude, because I just looked at the screen and it was all scribbled up.
Exactly. No, it makes sense because for some reason I thought that everything like that describes imams is what's being changed, but it's the imam that's changed. But the rest
Right.
is what's changing the imams. It's badal. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Any other questions? Ethan, who's first on the list up there? Muharram, huh? Read for us, Ya Muharram.
الحديث الأول عن أمير المؤمنين أبي حفص عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول إنما الأعمال بالنيات وإنما لكل امرئ ما نوى فمن كانت هجرته إلى الله ورسوله فهجرته إلى الله ورسوله ومن كانت هجرته للدنيا يصيبها أو امرأة ينكحها فهجرته إلى ما هاجر إليه رواه إمام المحدثين أبو عبد الله
Muhaddithin, this is plural.
Okay.
The Imams of the Muhaddithin, right? 2 Imams of the Muhaddithin.
Okay. رواه إمام المحدثين أبو عبد الله محمد بن إسماعيل بن إبراهيم بن المغيرة بن بردزبة البخاري وأبو الحسن مسلم بن الحجاج ابن مسلم القشيري النيسابوري رضي الله عنهما في صحيحيهما اللذين هما أصح الكتب المصنفة
نعم يا أبا طاهر.
الحديث الأول عن أمير المؤمنين أبي حفص عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول إنما الأعمال بالنيات وإنما لكل امرئ ما نوى فمن كانت هجرته إلى الله ورسوله فهجرته إلى الله ورسوله ومن كانت هجرته للدنيا يصيبها أو امرأة ينكحها فهجرته إلى ما هجر إليه. رواه إمام المحدثين أبو عبد الله محمد بن إسماعيل بن إبراهيم بن مغيرة بن بردزبة البخاري، وأبو الحسين مسلم ابن حجاج ابن الحجاج ابن مسلم القشيري النيسابوري رضي الله عنهم. النيسابوري.
It makes it a little better. Naysaburi.
النيسابوري رضي الله عنهما في صحيحيهما اللذين هما أصح الكتب المصنف.
Just real quick, Asahul Kutubi meaning mudaf ilayh, right? The most authentic of books. Al-Musannafa is a sifa of kutub, right? And we can see here that it's singular. We didn't say musannafat like I wrote over here, right? We didn't say musannafat being plural. Why? Because we're talking about kutub, and kutub are ghayr al-aqil, inanimate objects, and we talk about them in the feminine singular. We say kitab musannaf, right? But when we say kutub, we say musannafa, even though it's plural, we talk about it in the female singular. Barakallahu feekum. Faddal Abdullah.
الحديث الأول أن أمير المؤمنين أبي حفص عمر ابن
Abi Hafsu?
حفصة
Hafsa?
Hafs with Hafsin, but Hafs. Okay,
There you go. Hafs, or you're going to put a vowel on it, put the right vowel on it. No problem.
Abi Hafs Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول إنما الأعمال بالنيات وإنما لكل امرئ ما نواه فما كانت هجرته إلا الله ورسوله
Ilallahi. Ilallahi.
إلا الله ورسوله فهجرته إلا الله ورسوله ومن كانت هجرته لدنيا يصيبها وامرأة ينكحها فهجرته إلا ما هاجر إليه إليه وراه إمام المحدثين أبو عبد الله محمد ابن إسماعيل ابن إبراهيم ابن المغيرة ابن بردزبة البخاري وأبو حسين مسلم ابن الحجاج Hajjaj, Hajjaj ibn Muslim al-Kushairi and Naysaburi radiyallahuma fi sahihayhima allathini huma
اللذين اللذين
الثاني هما أصح الكتب المصنفة.
نعم. رضي الله عنهما هكذا. طيب إن شاء الله
رضي الله عنهما.
we meet tomorrow with a hadith الثاني. This is the hadith of Jibreel, right, which we just went over inside of Thalathatul Usul. Even though it's a very long hadith, well, not very long, but it's a long hadith. Hopefully we might be able to finish it tomorrow, right? It's how many pages? 1, 2, 3 pages, but hopefully we'll be able to finish it because we just went over it, man, like a week ago maybe, right? Inshallah. Allah Barak Fikum. I will see you, brothers and sisters, tomorrow, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.